Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kay Jacobson, and I am a librarian at the Ramsey County Libraries, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to J.B. Anderson's new series on schools of psychology. Before I get to that, I'd like to say a few things. Today's program is brought to you through a co-sponsorship of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute of the University of Minnesota and the Ramsey County Libraries with the financial support of Ramsey County Library Friends. We're deeply grateful to all of these organizations for making this webinar possible. Without any further ado, I am going to be turning things over to JB Andersen. Hey, JB.
Okay, everyone, you should be seeing my slide that's nothing but print material. So just some, this is kind of explanation. I've got 3 slides here. It's a different topic this academic year. I'll do 3/4 of psychology. First, it's the philosophical aspects of psychology. It will include science. Research has been done on these things, but we'll kind of divide psychology into 2 subject areas nowadays. Back when I was taking psychology classes in the 1960s, they were philosophical movements like Freud, Adler, Jung. Then psychology went scientific, and they kind of got rid of all these guys that had theories about, ego, id, superego, so on. Schools of psychology include such things as Sigmund Freud, the behaviorist movement, also Alfred Adler, Gestalt psychology, humanism, plus many more. I'll do a total of 13 of these philosophical movements. I have 2 more credits in psychology and 2 less credits than in history. So I know quite a bit about psychology, just got I've got couple more credits in psychology than I do in history from my college days. So I'm good in both fields. I taught an introduction to psychology, and I taught a sleep and dreams course, and I did those 2 things for 15 years. Then the whole science movement came in, and the stuff I was doing got unpopular, and I moved into history classes, including presidential history after that. Also, there's been some complaints about me not looking into the screen all the time, but I sometimes look to the right and the left. On the right, I have another monitor other than just my computer screen. I also have a drink that I might be using occasionally. On the left, I have a clock. I'm checking time. So please be patient when I'm not looking directly into my camera. Also, another complaint occasionally is that, hey, he just reads from the slide. Well, I wrote the slide. And if I speak it and you see it, and there's a graphic with it, the odds of remembering it are increased dramatically. Now, that was important when students were being given tests. But for us, it's just good for absorbing the information. We're not having tests in here and so on. So, okay, good. Let's get started. This is Alfred Adler. He lived from 7 February 1870 to 28 May 1937, a total of 67 years approximately. His life story, let's take a look at it. Again, 1870 to 1937. He was friends with Freud. He was younger than Freud. So Freud was his mentor, and Freud actually outlived him because Freud lived to be 83 years old when he died, and Adler died 2 years ahead of Sigmund Freud. They split, Adler and Freud did, and it was over psychological issues. And we'll have a lot more about this schism in their friendship a bit later on in this first quarter. Adler and Freud were both medical doctors. Freud had specialized in neurology, the nervous system. Adler had specialized in eyes, and both moved into psychiatry as a field. It wasn't a field at the time, it was new stuff. So there are three schools of what are called the three schools of Viennese psychiatry. Vienna is a city in Austria. Freud, Adler, and Viktor Frankl, who we'll be talking about in a couple of weeks, or they were all Viennese psychiatrists, and all of them were raised in the Jewish religion. There were some changes made there, but this again is Alfred Adler. So you got Freud, Adler, and Frankl, and the Viennese schools of psychiatry. Escaping the Holocaust. To get out of Austria, Freud moved to London. He died there and is buried there. Adler moved to the United States. More about what he did in New York City in a few slides. Frankl was captured by the Nazis and lived in a concentration camp, but since he was a doctor, they really needed his services, and he managed to survive the war. More about all of that when we talk about Frankl. Adler was on a lecture tour, and it was in Scotland. And he was speaking in the city of Aberdeen, which I have circled here on the map. You can see it's on the English Channel side of Scotland. And he was teaching at the Long Island School of Medicine in New York. And he was on a tour speaking during a break in his classes and died in Scotland. There's a group in my family on my mother's side that came from Scotland. Here's the Christie family ancestors. My maternal grandmother's maiden name was Christie. Adler was cremated, and his ashes were lost, and they couldn't find them. The place where they were cremated, the funeral home, just simply lost track of them, and that was 1937. 70 years later, in 2007, there was a very old casket at the funeral, and it got opened up, and inside was this smaller box, and it was Adler's ashes. Amazing. Adler was buried in Vienna, Austria in 2011. This is 4 years after his ashes were discovered. On the left is a long image of where his ashes are buried, and on the right, a close-up of the metallic image of his cremation box. By 1906, there were 17 members in a group that had been started by Freud of people who talked about psychiatry and psychology. Freud started it in 1902, so it gained a lot of members. Here's a 1902 photo of the 7 men that started this group, this psychiatry discussion group. 1911. There were, now this is, just 9 years after the founding of the group. There were some members got disgruntled and they split away from the group, and they gave 3 reasons why. Number one, Freud's personality development starting in childhood. They didn't like that notion that this was something that came about in childhood only and then didn't change after that. His sexual theories were not liked by the group of people who were in this discussion group. And third, Freud was publishing ideas from comments that had been made in the group by other people, but he wasn't accrediting those other people with the comments. So we don't like your personality theory. We don't like your sexual theory. We don't like that you don't accredit other people for things that they said. So Adler left the group along with several other people. What Adler liked most about Freud concepts, his theories on dreams and how dreams can give you a lot of information about a person. So you have them write down their dreams and tell them to you, and then you try to make sense out of their lifestyle, so on. And he really liked the use of the scientific method in psychological research. So science enters the picture here with psychology, but for many decades yet, it still maintains these theories or philosophical constructs. Freud had difficulties with Adler. We've talked about Adler's difficulties with Freud. Now let's take a look at Freud and his view of Adler. First, he didn't like Adler's socialist beliefs. They had come into function here in the 1880s, and Adler had accepted them, and the communist movement had begun, in the early 1900s. And 1917, there's a revolution in Russia. And pictured here, living from 1872 to 1962, age 90, is Adler's wife, Raisa Adler. And she was very closely associated with Leon Trotsky. So both Adler and his wife were practicing socialists. Adler converted into Christianity in the 1930s. A lot of people say this was to avoid being called a Jew and maybe picked up or rounded up by Nazis in Austria where he was living. But that made no difference to the Nazis. You were born a Jew, you're a Jew. So Adler was treated as a Jew during this time period. Nazis shut down his practice. They said you can't be a doctor specializing in psychiatry any longer. You're out of business. So that's when Adler and his wife got out of Europe. Basic tenets of Adlerian psychology is our next major discussion point. We're going to look at birth order. Are you a firstborn child? Are you a lastborn child? This was a big deal to Adlerians. What's your position in the family of siblings? The inferiority complex, we've all heard of that. It's an Adler idea. He dreamed it up, and we'll talk about that also. And then lifestyle. How do you live? We'll talk about these three items: birth order, inferiority complex, and lifestyle. Birth order first, we'll define it. That's your place in the family constellation. I'm a second-born child. I have an older brother, and then I have a younger brother and two younger sisters. So in a family of six, I am second-born. This determines your personality. Here's a current book, the graphic on this page, the Birth Order book by Kevin Lehman, or Lehman. There are many books on birth order that you can find. You can look them up on Amazon or just on the internet generally. Anyhow, your place in the family. This determines personality. Are you weak or strong? We can tie that, according to Adlerian psychology, to your place among your siblings. What do you wish for in your life? You know, that's also a basic tenet here. Okay, let's take a look at firstborn children in the birth order. 44% of all children are firstborn, and they get lots of attention from the parents. This is pretty exciting for the parents. Hasn't happened to them before, and they spend a lot of time with that firstborn kid. And the firstborn kid then, he spends his time with adults only. There's no other kids around till he's old enough to form into a play group or something. But firstborn characteristics: they are hard driving, person of accomplishment. They are demanding, particularly of others. You should be like me. They are responsible. They do all the things that are right and correct for in a society. They are accomplished. My older brother got a contract at MGM. He was the most listened to radio personality in Minneapolis for 7 years. Accomplished. Eldest child. My brother, when he went out to California and started working at MGM, needed a roommate. And he was in his early 20s, and he got another roommate who was a couple of years older than he was, who was also there on a contract. And for 2 years, my brother lived with Jack Nicholson. They stayed in touch with each other until my brother died a decade ago, regularly on the phone. These firstborn children grow up faster. They become more like an adult. They're 5 years old and they're talking like adults talk, and they're supercharged. They're going to get stuff done. All 7 Mercury astronauts, the first 7 astronauts in the United States, all of them were firstborn children. Most politicians are firstborn, but most presidents are not firstborn. This is a picture of Republican debaters at the 2012 election. But politicians, meaning people in Congress, mayors, state legislatures, national legislature, most of those people are firstborn children. But for presidents, it's 22.7% of all presidents are firstborn children, whereas 44% of all children are firstborn. Donald Trump is a fourth-born child. Most presidents are middle children. Here's 3 siblings, all males, and got an arrow pointed to the guy in the middle. Middle children tend to be presidents. When a second child is born into the family, what happens? This firstborn child, who's been associated with the adults, all of a sudden feels dethroned. someone else is getting attention. Firstborn child often becomes a problem then in the family because lots has been taken away from him or her. Characteristics of the firstborn, continuing here. Second child is born. The first child is all the time declaring how he is correct, right, what I say, what you should be doing with this kid, so on. And I'm in power, and he takes control over this younger kid, and I'm the perfect one. I'm superior. I can talk, I can walk, etc. Birth order, second-born children. Second-born children generally have very opposite characteristics of the firstborn child. So they're an opposite of the firstborn, like hot and cold are opposites. They have to find their own place somehow. They find interests that the older child does not have. I'm not going to be like this guy. You know, he likes the dog quite a bit, so I'm not going to like the dog. I'm going to be interested in something else other than animals. Frequently, the second-born person becomes a quitter. This affects their school performance and so on. They develop feelings of insecurity. The older child is better than they are. The adults are better than they are, or at least they can all do more than you can as the second-born child. So there's a lot of insecurity that develops about how talented the parents are and all the successes of the firstborn older child. They'll become responsible if the first child is undependable. Sometimes the older child becomes doesn't fit the pattern, you know, like with all social statistics here, 100% of all firstborn children don't have the characteristics of the 70-some% of firstborn children. So there's always exceptions when you're dealing with social statistics. So the first child is undependable. Well, then the second child becomes very dependable to the adults around him. Second child may feel like he's involved pretty heavily in competition, will become demanding, hyperactive, trying to gain control over this firstborn kid and the adults, who all three now are telling you what to do and how to behave and what growing up is about, etc. A third child is born. The second child feels squeezed. You got an older one that knows everything above you. Now you got this young one that knows nothing, can't walk, talk, etc. You're caught in the middle, and your parents are giving attention to this third-born child. So occupational stress is measured in this same way. Like a waitress, you got hungry clients out there placing orders for food. Then in the kitchen, you got a chef who's saying, hey, that's been sitting there for 30 seconds. It's getting cold. You know, you're caught in the middle. Nurses, very high stressed occupation. Waitresses are number one in stress. Number two in stress are nurses. You got a patient and you got the medical doctors, and you're caught between them. You're squeezed. Middle child. Okay, if there's three kids, number two's a middle child. If you got six kids, etc., you got a couple in the middle there. They generally feel pretty neglected. Parents are saying, nah, we've been through this before. This kid's going to be okay. They're the middle child. Characteristics of a middle child, like you could be two or three and a child of four, or three or four and a child of in a family of six, etc. They feel like they get little attention. They become rebellious, secretive. If I can have my own ideas, I'll be okay. I don't have to listen to this older person or these two adult parents. And so they keep a lot of stuff to themselves. They feel like outsiders. I got three people telling me what to do. I got this other kid now below me that's getting a lot of attention. So they become compromising. They become very diplomatic. They try to resolve issues within the family and meditating, like sitting alone a lot. Look at the bottom picture here. It's chess pawns, and there's an outsider. Middle child of three siblings we're going to take a look at next. The oldest is capable. The youngest is the prince or princess of the families. Middle child is squeezed, as we've mentioned, by older people and this younger person getting lots of attention. The middle of three children feels like they're unfairly treated, they're neglected, they're not loved. The older kid got lots of attention, gave you lots of directions. The younger kid's getting lots of attention. I'm neglected. Youngest child, this is the last born child in a group. Parents are exhausted. Oh no, we got another one. The youngest are generally pampered. They're treated more like a pet, like the family mascot. You know, you're last in line. They never develop a lot of characteristics that are necessary for making it in the adult world. Um, they're just always seen as you're the youngest, you're the kid, etc. Behaviors that weren't accepted in older children. You were constantly correcting this firstborn child, telling them how to behave. Now in this last-born child, it's, oh, that's so cute, and it gets overlooked. And so there's a whole different way of treating them. Characteristics of youngest or last-born child. Clown-like behavior. They get away with a lot of stuff that isn't adult-like. They get to act foolish and not be corrected. They're the comedian of the family, and they're restless, moving around all the time. Studies done on comedians find that the majority are last-born children. They love to play the baby in the family, these last-born children. They really recognize that role and how other people are treating them and behave in that fashion. They're not taken seriously. They're small-sized compared to their older siblings and their parents. And they get others to do things for them. I'd like a drink of water, stuff like that. Hence, there's an increased sense of dependency in younger children. Here's a picture of a family of three with a young runt that has come along, and everybody's grinning and smiling and looking at him, and he's a kid that gets to do what he wants. Oftentimes, the youngest child aligns themselves with the oldest child. It becomes a learning situation. They become like your boss. Tell me what to do. You know, how does this phone work here? I got this I want to watch a Bugs Bunny cartoon, stuff like that. Last-born children are generally the most creative in the family. Last-born child of 6 children in my family has spent his life making paintings. He's a visual artist. Birth order, an only child. What are the characteristics of an only child? You're surrounded by adults. You are totally incompetent as a result. These adults are doing all sorts of things that you cannot do as an only child. You become pampered. You're the center of attention. There's no other children around that steal this attention away from you. Parents are uncertain about child rearing. This is the first kid we had. What do we do? Firstborn child and then an only child. It's even becomes a larger characteristic for parents, the uncertainty. Anxieties about how to raise this kid get transmitted to this only child, and the child develops feelings of insecurity as a result. Anybody know what they're doing? Becomes a question this kid starts asking, what is going on? Characteristics. They don't share with others when they become adults. They never had to. There wasn't another kid in the family. They don't get involved in community activities as strongly. No community problem solving activities. Well, they become politicians, but anyway, they feel like they stand alone even in that group. They feel lonely. They get interested in themselves, not in others. They tend to collect a lot of goods. They want property. They want stuff. Other characteristics are not very interactive socially, only children, due to the fact that when they were coming of age, they weren't participating with anyone else, not until they got into a play group or later, but by that time, things had happened. They feel mistreated. The demands they make don't get met. I need this, I need that. Why isn't anybody helping with that? They're not good at cooperating, and often only children are shy children. They're the shy person in the group. So they feel a bit blown apart. Basic tenets, family constellation. We're going to talk about some characteristics here. The only boy in a family of girls. That only boy ends up getting pampered. Well, all we've had is girls. The fourth child in my family of origin was a girl. My dad spent a lot of time with her. And as a boy, you become the little prince. As a girl, you're the little princess. And you're the joy of the family. Finally, something different. 3 boys, now a girl. 4 girls, now a boy. And there he is. Only boy in a family of girls. Why don't I get a balloon? The only girl in a family of boys, commonly called the little princess. Finally, we've had a girl, or all we've had is boys since that one girl. Oh man. Often becomes a tomboy. feels isolated because the boys play together, the girls play together. Uh, so I'm generally not with my sibling brothers. Also, a lot depends on how the family sees her, you know. If she's the firstborn child, um, she may have gotten a lot of those characteristics. If she's the last born child, and the only girl, she gets lots of characteristics. Uh, Death of a sibling. What happens in a family when a child dies? This was common up to 1900. After 1900, we started getting vaccines and childhood diseases became something that were investigated scientifically, and vaccines started to come into their own and are now being heavily criticized. But so in the 20th century, a sibling dying in a family was a tremendous loss. My paternal grandfather, there were 11 kids in his family. 5 died by the age of 10. This was common in the 1800s and early 1900s. And future children, after a sibling dies, tend to become very overprotected. Parents are very worried about what's happening with this child. There's a lot of anxiety about the child's welfare, the children that come after the death of a child. Uh, oh, we got to watch, we got to be real careful. There's lots of protective behavior on the part of parents. The deceased child is often spoken of and idealized, and the other children are told about that person that died, and the other children in the family end up being in competition with this ghost child. Now, these gap in ages. Let's say you got a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old, you know. Well, then they all fit these constellations. But what if you've got a 1-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they're the 2 kids in the family? That's a spread of more than 7 years, which the Adlerians thought that really changes things when you get a gap like that. 2 children 1 year apart, 10 years later, a third child is born. You treat that third child as a firstborn child. They now have the characteristics of a firstborn, not a thirdborn. So a 7-year separation. My older brother, I am 6 years and 11 months older than he is. So I didn't quite make it to 7 years, but am I a second-born child or am I a firstborn child in terms of characteristics? An adopted or handicapped child, Adlerians never looked at this. They never deposited any theories about it. They said very little about children that are adopted or children who are handicapped. What they did say is the attitude of the parents is important. Well, doesn't tell us much. Large families, little is said if you've got 6 to 10 kids in a family. Adlerian said very little about large family size. Again, attitude of the parents is what's important in family size. If there's little competition within the family, there tends to be less personality differences between siblings. This was theorized and it was theorized from observing families. And taking notes about it. So less personality differences between siblings in families with little competition. Everybody gets along, everybody's shaking hands, etc. Family partnerships. Closeness of age really bonds people. Top image here is the Wright brothers. Look what they accomplished, inventing airplanes that actually flew and had what there were planes, but they didn't have engines. What before the Wright brothers? So and there were hot air balloons. And what the Wright brothers did is they invented the first powered airplanes, but very close in age, very similar interests, remained together during their lifetimes. Generally leads to partnerships. You get a kid is born, and 11 months later, a second kid is born. People tend to bond very closely when there is age closeness, known as family partnerships. Family size. There's no ideal family size, either theorized by Adlerians or found in their research. Having one kid, having 3 kids, having 6 kids makes no difference. There's no family size that just makes everybody super persons. Basic tenets, assumptions of Adlerians, social statistics. Again, these social statistics almost never apply 100%. They're true in 70% of the cases, and 30% not so true. Exceptions to birth order rules are common. As a result, all this stuff we've talked about, there are lots of people that disprove it, but it is the case in a majority. Almost always a large majority, like into the 70th percentiles. Personalization or perception. Who are you? What do you think you are? How do you see yourself? This is never about reality. It's never about what happens to us. And it's never about what others say that we are. It's a perception. And it's a perception that we have of the self. So who are you? The guy on the left sees 4 objects. The guy on the right sees 3. Take a minute and look at those. You'll see 4 and then 3. And that's perception. One person's perception may be quite different from another person's. One person may believe that perception, the other person not believe it. So it's basically about how we see ourselves. Our perceptions are what we end up becoming. No such thing as perfection. There's no perfect family. There's no perfect set of characteristics. There's no perfect person. The goal of working toward improvement is the goal toward a perfect set. We want to be something, so we work toward it or for it. Encouragement is most important in these dreams that we have, especially as children. And encouragement can come from the adults around you. But you frequently just don't ever make it to what you want. And this is called the most famous of the Adlerian concepts, the inferiority complex. Child rearing. We're going to look at 3 topics here. marriage, socialization, and occupation. Child rearing, discouragement. It intensifies inferiority. Don't do that. No, the good children don't behave that way. So stop that. That's discouragement. Now, sometimes you're discouraging good things, like I uh, quit fixing the front door. I don't want you to be a laborer. You're going to be somebody that goes to college. So sets you up for failure in a sense. The inferiority complex. Definition. The driving force in the lives of all people, according to Alfred Adler. This is the driving force. I am inferior. Young children, babies, they feel inferiority the greatest. They're totally dependent on adults. Babies cannot talk. They're looking at adults. Adults are doing something. What the heck is that? Why can't I do that? Babies cannot walk. Who are these people standing up and I'm having to lay down all the time? Or I'm having to crawl or whatever it might be. Babies can't walk, adults can. I can't feed myself. Or why are they feeding me? Why do I see them doing it to themselves, but I'm not doing it to myself? And then in addition to all of that, like you get something slopped on the tray of your seat and you pick it up with your hands, and these people are using knives and forks. What the heck are those things? Slowly skills are learned. Here I'm learning to walk. Pretty soon I'll be talking. Pretty soon I'll be feeding myself, etc. So skills are learned. But a sense of weakness has settled in. I'm an inadequate person, has settled in. You're 10 months to 2 years old before you can do any of this stuff or all of these things. Keeps people struggling, striving. First experiences for any child are, I can't do that. Compensation, inferiority complex. We're going to deal with the concept of compensation. How do we make up for inferiority? We do it by overachieving in a single area or a couple of areas. That makes up for the inadequacies that we have and felt we had when we were infants and even children. So compensation is making up for inferiority through overachievement. Overachievement in one area makes up for weaknesses in other areas, is Adler's concept here. I'm an okay person. I can climb the cliff wall. Other people can't do that, so I'm in great shape. Even though you can't spell the word prestidigitation. So the inferiority complex, introduced by Adler, it is the main theme of Adlerian psychology. Adler called it the inferiority complex. We start life totally dependent on the adults around us. We're unable to do anything. Then we have to deal with that for the remainder of our lives. We're going to cover up weaknesses that we have. We don't want people to know about those weaknesses. We hide inadequacies. No, hey, let's go for a walk around the block. No, thanks. I don't like being outdoors. I don't like that. It's an inadequacy. I walk half a block and I start feeling funny. So, yeah, we're not going to get involved. Be superior at something else. Is family life poor? How about work life? That's your other option. Be great at work. Family life is poor. Or you can have the opposite of that also. Here's Lyndon Johnson talking to an aide. Just told him something funny and leans forward into the guy, and the guy's leaning backwards. And holy mackerel, this guy is intrusive. So compensation can get negative. That's called overcompensation. So I'm going to treat people really well, and we're going to chuckle together. And this photograph is overcompensation, turning a better performance into a power battle with others. You overcompensate. An example is a midlife crisis. Look at the cartoon. I don't care if people call it a midlife crisis. I'm glad I got this fancy new car. So you drive around the neighborhood and you're showing off that, hey, look what I've got. Look what I could afford. New stuff. Midlife crisis. There's a loss of energy. I can't do the things I used to do. Loss of maintenance. Not maintaining things. And you strike out at others frequently, such as this comment in the cartoon. I don't care if people call it a midlife crisis. Then there's undercompensation. This is when compensation becomes negative. You have fear about other things, objects, people, etc. Fears grow in you. You get a sinking feeling and you start asking for help from other people quite a bit. Compensation is the origin of narcissism, which is self-love. You're weak, you know nothing, but you only show people how great you are. Here we got a little guy with a mirror that magnifies himself. Narcissism. We got 5 definitions here. It's an inflated sense of the self and the importance of the self. Deep need for admiration. People looking at you, shaking your hand, saying good things. There's also a lack of empathy among narcissistic people. They don't care. Empathy is not caring. You gain a sense of entitlement. I'm the king, even though you're not, but it's a lot of self-love. Interpersonal relationships become very disturbed. You're all the time being the king around your subjects, and they feel that. They see that. Narcissistic tendency. You speak highly of yourself. Be friends only with high-ranking people. I watch these mysteries that are on Amazon. There's a lot of them. And a lot of them are British in origin. And man, do they, I mean, the separation between the elite and their workers is pretty amazing. You know, you don't come to the park, wait outside with the car. You don't come inside. So lots of lines are drawn. Be friends with high-ranking people only. You want that caste system. Speak most commonly about consumption. I have this. I eat that. Or, oh no, I would never eat such a thing. or and so on and so forth. Compensation is one of Freud's defense mechanisms. When we talk about Freud, probably next quarter, we'll talk about his defense mechanisms. How do we defend ourselves against others? Compensation is a way of doing that. It's one of the most vital elements of Adlerian psychology is compensation. How do you make up for these feelings of inferiority? The inferiority complex that we are all marked with. This is Demosthenes. These are a head statue and a full body statue of him. He was wanting to be a leader in Greek society, but he stuttered horribly. He got the idea of going down to the seashore and finding pebbles, placing them in his mouth, and then talking while he's got all these marbles in his mouth. And that he was hoping that would keep his tongue from doing things. He thought his tongue maybe was the problem. He overcame the stutter by doing this. This is compensation. He now could become a leader in the Greek Empire. Napoleon, short in stature, not very tall, even in his age. 4 or 5 inches shorter than everybody who was 5'6". But he conquered the Mediterranean Sea area. Compensation. He had some trouble in Russia, though. Lots of people, lots of Frenchmen died. The invasion didn't work. Napoleon, note the tight pants. They came back into fashion in the 2020s. Everybody was wearing loose clothing during Napoleon's time. Here he does something that outlines himself much better. Note the table here. See? He's taller than the table, but he's shorter than the wall clock back here, the grandfather clock. This is Glenn Cunningham, a Kansas farm boy in the 1920s. There was a bad fire at the family barn. He went in to try to put it out. He had flesh burned from his legs. His mother massaged his legs until he could walk again. 1936 Olympics in Berlin, Germany, won a silver medal in the 1,500-meter race. He set a world record in the 1-mile race of 4 minutes, 6.8 seconds. Highest world ranking in track, first place. Talk about compensation. You might notice down here, you can see damage in his leg. Here, I couldn't get it blown up without it being heavily pixelated, but despite these heavy burns that burned away some tissue, he compensated dramatically by becoming the greatest runner in the 1930s. He also earned a PhD in physical education and taught at Cornell College in Iowa. Lifestyle is another major concept of Adlerian psychology. Let's define it. We develop patterns in our life, patterns that help us overcome inadequacies. In other words, there are certain things we do and certain things we don't do. These patterns tend to last throughout our lifetime. They're called lifestyles. That was Adler's term. Freud called them defense mechanisms. So lifestyles, defense mechanisms, they're things we used we use to defend ourselves. They are things we use, talking like Adler now, to show to other people. Lifestyles, sometimes written as two words, sometimes hyphenated. Here's a book, Adlerian Lifestyle Counseling by Rule and Bishop. Oh, my hyphen hurts. Something wrong with one word? Nope, that's how I'm going to use it in here. So, lifestyles, the three most common lifestyles. The overprotected child. You have to satisfy every need of this person. This overly protected child who's not allowed to play near the fireplace, uh, uh, has to wear incredible amounts of floating devices when you're in the pool, etc. They become self-centered, have little concern for others. It's meet my needs throughout their life, which is what people have been doing. Oh, you got this need, we don't want you to ground. Oh, you, etc., etc. Three most common types. Number two, the rejected child. This was the overprotected child. This is the rejected child. He wants revenge, or she does, and they show hostility toward others. Nobody took care of me when I was a kid. I had to do all my own stuff. And just the opposite of the overprotected child. And humor. Humor lightens situations, breaks tensions. It's a way to get away from these inferiorities that we feel. My family, this is it for my family, is humor. Uh, Everything ends in a remark that's hilarious. When we all get together, there's 5 of the 6 of us still alive, and it's one comedy routine after another. Lifestyles worksheet. This gets a bit complex. There's a lot of stuff here. By complex, I don't mean it's hard to understand. It's easy to understand, but there's a lot of it. Many worksheets have been developed by Adlerian psychologists over the last 75 years. Some are in a column form, such as is showed here, where there's a question on the left, and you write a response in on the right side. Here's a therapist with a patient. Generally, the therapist asks the questions and then records the responses of the individual. You don't give this to the individual and ask them to fill it out and bring it back next time. Sometimes you do. The Bartholow and Wilhite version of the Adlerian lifestyle worksheet is the one we're going to look at here. There are many versions of this that have been developed by people who considered themselves to be Adlerian psychologists. So, what's your father's name? What's your mother's name? I want the names of all your siblings in the order of birth. What's their age today? Are they married? Who's most like you? Who's most different from you? If you're the only child, describe the kind of kid you are. Or if there's only one other child, describe the kind of kid that he or she is. What kind of kid were you? Personality characteristics, behavior, other things. What were your favorite subjects in school? What were your least liked subjects? Any athletic interests? Any childhood habits? Did you suck your thumb? Did you wet the bed? Did you bite your nails, etc.? Any family members with frequent sickness? Any with a handicap? Did you feel as a child like other boys and girls had advantages over you? If you're a girl, were you a tomboy? Rate each sibling high or low. Intelligence, grades in school, hard worker, helped around the house, conformed, openly rebelled, tried to please others, used charm, mischievous, considerate, critical of others, selfish, demanded their way, got their way, sensitive, easily hurt, felt sorry for self, complained, temper tantrums, competitive. Oh, we're not done yet. Sense of humor, idealistic, materialistic, standards of achievement, standards of right and wrong, standards of behavior. These are all the other kids in the family that we're talking about here. Athletic, physical strength, height, looks, masculine, feminine, spoiled, punished, number of friends. Who was the most spoiled in your family? Who spoiled them? How and for what reason did they do it? Who made an issue of fairness and unfairness in the family? Who did the punishing? How and for what? Who did the punishing? When your father gets home, he's going to hear about this. How and for what were you punished? What role did you play in peer groups, people of your same age? Your main interest or proficiency, what was it? Who took care of whom? Who played with whom? Who got along best with whom? Which two argued and fought the most? Who was helpful at home? Who made mischief? If deceased parent, if you have a deceased parent, list the cause of death. And what was your age at the time that parent died? Tell me about your father. Name, age, education, occupation, what kind of person, his relationship to the children. Which sibling was most like your father? Who was your father's favorite child? Mother. What kind of person is your mother? Her relationship to the children. Sibling most like this parent. Who's her favorite child? Describe the father and mother's relationship. Who was dominant? Who made decisions? Did they agree on methods of child rearing? Did they openly quarrel? Who was most ambitious for the children and how? You're getting into a situation where you're really describing people in the family for the therapist. These are lifestyle issues. Any other people live with your family? A grandparent, uncle, aunt, friend, servant? Describe that person that lived with your family. What was their relationship to you? Describe dreams you had in childhood and emotions like joy or sorrow or things you favored. You were for those things. Childhood fears, childhood ambitions, recurrent dreams and emotions. Tell me 3 wishes that you have. We. Social interest is the next major concept that we'll talk about, and we'll break here pretty quick in 5 or 6 minutes and have some question. Are there a lot of questions, Kay? No.
We've got about 5 at the moment.
Okay. Can
So,
I go for 5 more minutes, or do you think, or do you want to start questions now?
well, I think maybe start questions because I want to start with a general
Oh, okay.
one that's going to be, and then the rest are birth order.
Oh, sure.
Okay. If that would be okay.
Yeah, so you're going to start.
Okay. So the first thing would be, it's kind of a two-pronged thing. Why did you want to do a series on the School of Psychology? And can you help us distinguish between psychology and psychiatry?
Yes. Uh, Well, generally, it's been of very strong interest to people, psychology has, and who are we and what are we doing and so on. Um, that's one thing that got me interested in it and why I was majored in it along with history and later took counseling courses. And, and I just found it of interest, I guess. And
Mm,
I find most people are interested in it. So I don't know. I've been doing presidents. This is the second time in 20 years in OLLI that I've done psychologists. Uh, so I guess personal interest is plus. I think people are really interested in presidents. I think they're really interested in psychology too, also. So that's kind of why I taught it and am doing it now here. And I frequently get comments when I've taught psychology, like done a single lecture at a senior center or something. People will tell me, I wish I'd have known this when I was raising my children. And or about themselves. They talk about learning about themselves and so on. Now, psychiatry and psychology. A psychiatrist is a medical doctor who specializes in psychology, and he's called a psychiatrist. A psychologist is a person generally with a PhD, Doctor of Philosophy degree, and are they took psychology courses in psychology departments. They did not go to a medical school. The major difference is they do the same work, but psychiatrists can give prescriptions
okay.
for drugs. Psychologists cannot. Frequently, a psychologist will call a psychiatrist and say, I have a patient who needs thus and such, you know. Uh, and the psychiatrist might want to talk to them for 15 minutes and then say, yeah, you can use this tranquilizer medication. Sometimes it's over the counter, in which case a psychologist might recommend it. But if it's a prescription drug, you need to have the input of a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist is a medical doctor, psychologist is a therapist, and
Okay.
they both can do talk therapies.
So- okay, how does gender affect birth order, such as in a male-dominated culture,
Yeah.
um, that we grew up in more so?
Yeah. Well, gender has effects. It's my father had three sons, and he's wishing for a girl. Finally, the fourth kid comes along, and it's a daughter. And my dad spent a lot of time with that sister.
Hmm.
It was something different, something new. Um, there are things that we allow boys to do, and we don't allow girls to do those things, and vice versa. That's mom's work. No, you don't do that. Get out of the kitchen here. You come and sit with me. We're going to watch a football game. So they really get divided up. And this happens with occupations. In the last 50, 60 years, we've begun to get rid of that. When my wife was in college in the 1960s, she couldn't get into the law school. She couldn't get into the med school. That stuff was changing by the time we hit 1970s. And she could, a woman could get into those professions. Hillary Clinton is a good example of a woman that got into a law school early on.
Okay. I was gonna say, in terms of like larger families, do you think sometimes the firstborn, like if you have a couple of boys born and then you have a couple of girls born, would the oldest daughter sometimes have those firstborn tendencies amongst the girls?
No, it depends on oh, it depends on the split.
Okay.
Uh, uh, Adler didn't see a lot of differences in in gender for what kind of characteristics you develop, like feeling pretty unimportant and so on. That happens to men, happens to women.
I'm wondering if there'd be more difference now in terms of more equality of working towards equality of genders,
Yes. Uh,
seeing more different tendencies.
it's 1940.
Hmm.
Talking to your daughter, no, you can't go to college. We need to spend that money on the boys. Now, today, 60% of all college students are women. They're like 52% of the population.
So,
So yeah, that stuff has changed. We are beginning to hear lots of arguments from the higher ups in our society, the higher ups politically, about getting that kind of a lifestyle back. Uh,
um, okay. Do somebody's wondering, do miscarriages count in birth order?
well, it's the loss of a child. It's not as dramatic as a child dying after you've cared for it for 3 or 5 years, but it's still a loss. We've all talked to people, friends who's have been involved in their family. In their family, there's been a miscarriage, and it's not the depth of despair, like the death of a child, but
Hmm.
boy, I've sure noticed. I mean, people get sad and show signs of grief. And, you know,
Okay. Um, I'm going to go with the simpler one before I get to a complex one. How
okay,
are birth order characteristics affected when there is a significant gap of, say, more than 5 years between offspring? Like that
I,
oops child,
yeah.
14 years after.
Well, yeah, Adlerians say 7 years is the big breaking point,
Okay, 7.
as I talked about today. So that 7 year break, you start over with a new family. You might have 3 kids, and then 8 years later, two more. That's a second family. That's a first, though that fourth and fifth child are one and two. You start over counting again for the characteristics. My wife is 10, 11, and 12 years younger than her three siblings. So she would count as an only child or a firstborn child. Yeah. Um, so you get
Okay.
those dramatic differences and separations. I don't know. A lot of times, people with big separations, like more than 7 years, feel like they have two mothers. The mother who gave them birth and the sister who's 8 years older than them.
For me, it was my brother. Okay. He was my second mom.
Yeah,
Okay. On the topic of birth order, has anyone studied the differences when some children are adopted and others are genetic offspring?
yeah. Adoptions are not considered by Adlerians. They just Adler never talked about it. His proponents don't talk about it. There's not a lot of information, at least coming from Adlerians. Um, Adopted children are, uh, you get what psychiatrists and psychologists say today is get them in touch with the parent that they are biologically related to. I've talked to many adopted children, and their parents have done precisely that. They've been advised to do it, and they're 18 years old, and they talked to them once. That was it. Uh, I worked with a woman once. Her parents were on vacation in another city, crossed the street, hit by a car, both were killed. They started cleaning out the parents' house and they came upon a box. She and her sister did. They came upon a box that had adoption papers for both of them. They were now 30-year-old adults. I didn't know a thing about it. And that can be devastating information to learn in that manner. So generally the advice that's given is, let the kid know that he's adopted or she's adopted, and talk about, want to talk to your mom that isn't raising you. And some say no, some say yes. You're my mom.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how it plays out in terms of if when children are adopted and
Yeah.
in order. I mean, if it that would be a fascinating study to do, maybe.
Well,
Um,
yeah. This
okay.
woman that uh, that found out she was adopted when she was 30 years old found her mother, her biological mother, went there. She said, the physical characteristics and biting my lip all the time. So was she, uh, it was very eye-opening. And
Yeah, so now I have a couple that deal with the whole thing of step siblings, half siblings, combined families, things about how it affects things because of divorce and remarriage. Um, are there dynamics that have been studied that show any difference in?
well, sometimes if you have a born child to you and then you adopt someone, frequently within the sibling group, though, you're not part of this family. She's my real mother. You get sibling rivalry stuff that can come out of it.
But then you have remarriage, and then you might have half siblings, or you bring in a step sibling. Um,
Well, Adler never dealt with that stuff.
it's just like focusing on the
Yeah.
easiest way and take all the variables out. Because don't
Yeah.
tell me that there weren't half siblings
Yeah.
back then. There were, but
Well, you can find that information. Go online, look it up. It's there's research been done on it, but
yeah. And somebody even asked, how about a child that is the oldest in one scenario? They're the middle child, and they might be the youngest because of divorce and remarriage.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, and we're at a level, I think it's about 50% of all people get divorced. So that's become a major factor that the Adlerians, when they were starting up, and didn't have to deal with much. It existed, but not in the quantities that it does today. And by the way, I'll talk about this later, but there are Adlerian societies to this day uh, in cities. And I mean, I went to couple of their meetings back in the 70s, 80s.
Okay, so we still have two more to go at the moment. One's just asking, are we going to find out what Adler did with all the information he gathered?
What who did?
Are we
Adler.
going to find out what Adler did with all the information he gathered?
Yeah. Well, that's basically what I'm doing, you know,
Is
telling his here's
coming up with these theories.
yeah, here's the philosophies that he developed
Okay.
and he looked at them too. I mean, he it isn't just philosophy. I mean, he studied families. There's that Adlerian list that we went through of all the questions you ask, and so you're collecting information. But yeah, that's what we're talking about, really.
And then last one I have is what were Adler's three greatest contributions to the world?
Well, he felt it was the inferiority complex. You're all next to nothing. It's not that bad, but what it is how do you make up
Okay.
for the horrible lessons that put us all in our place between ages 0 to 3. Yeah.
Okay. Clarification on the information thing. They say, I meant, what did he do with that information for people he treated?
Hmm. Well, he applied it.
Apply. It was like to help them
Yeah.
overcome their.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
hopefully not overcompensate, but just learn how to compensate versus over or under
Yeah.
compensating.
Basically, it's how not to let this become a part of your existence that ends up ruining you even further. How can what can we do? It's you carry these things into therapy. I know what's wrong with you. I've got this theory. Now, tell me about it. You know, and,
Okay, and back to the previous one, they asked for his three greatest contributions. So would it be inferiority complex, inferiority complex, or is there something
well, lifestyle that we began to
lifestyle?
talk
And
about today is important. How do you behave around other people?
okay.
And what do you buy into? And then the inferiority complex, and we'll deal with another one later.
Okay, oh, couple quick ones. So does one believe in Adler or Freud or others when in therapy, or do you ever combine practices?
Yeah, of course, people combine them, but you tend to be a part of one. Now, those tendencies have gone away. It's science today. I talk to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Are you Freudian or Adlerian? Oh, no, none of that stuff. It just has gone, it's been swept away because it isn't science.
So, okay, well, we just hit 2 o'clock, and that is the end of our time. And I know we will get to more things next week.
Yes.
And we want to thank everyone for joining us today. We thank JB
Yes.
for sharing all of his information with us. Yeah, it's been an interesting time. We will definitely delve into more things and consider this all our own little therapy session. No. But but no, it is really interesting, and thank you for sharing your passion for this with us. So everyone have a good day, stay warm, and we will see you next Tuesday. Or
When,
Wednesday, Wednesday. What day of the week is it?
what year is it?
Okay, bye everyone. Thanks.